Okay.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. It's so good to see you all. We have a pretty brisk agenda today. So focusing on the main flow will be on work and workforce and talent development. So just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Sydney, can you confirm if we have quorum?
Confirmed.
Oh, awesome. And we'll start with public comment. Do we have anyone who would like to make a public comment?
I did not receive any written public comment.
All right. And then we have our consent agenda item, which is to approve the WTDB Executive Committee meeting minutes from January 17th of 2024. And I'm looking for a motion to approve those.
I would move to approve the minutes from 1/17/2024.
You.
Heather Fix seconds.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, all in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? And did anyone abstain? Okay,
Hey, Ann,
we are, yes.
sorry to interrupt. I just thought it might be prudent to have Martha Schrader introduce herself as a newly appointed member to the WTDB and the Executive Committee.
Excellent.
Well-
Martha, welcome. And do you want to do give us a quick rundown about you and why you joined?
Well, I'm Commissioner Martha Schrader. I have actually been serving on our workforce board since about 2003, except when I was 2 years in the state Senate. And when I returned to the commission, I still serve on our workforce board, and it's a very important piece of what we do here in economic development in our county. And I was thrilled that my name came up to be appointed to this board. A little bit about me. Again, I've been here quite a while. And I also, at this point in time at the national level, am serving as the Community Economic and Workforce Development Chair at the National Association of Counties. So oftentimes I have to go back and forth to those meetings. And of course, we just got done having our legislative meeting where we are lobbying very hard to make sure we get the WIOA dollars that we need to continue our workforce systems, not just for our county, all our counties in the state and across the nation. So thank you for welcoming me. I just want to say I am going to have to leave a little early today because I have another commitment that has been on my calendar for about over 2 months that I'm going to have to get to, but I'll probably have my assistant come in and listen. Okay.
That's great.
Thank you.
And is there a preferred way that we should address you?
Oh, just call me Martha.
Just wanted to check. I'll make sure I didn't.
No,
You know.
I don't care. It's fine. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so let's move into our main part of our agenda. And first up, Sherry is going to talk with us. Recall at our last gathering, we worked on our agreements, and super excited for the work that we did then, and then the subsequent refining of that work. So Sherry, do you want to take us through that and talk a little bit more about it?
Sure. Yes, I'm like, am I muted? I was confused myself for a minute. Sure. I don't know, Sydney, is it possible for you to share the agreements on the screen? We at our last meeting, we talked about like a list of agreements, things that the board in general could get behind, something to reframe us when we come together, to reground us in our purpose. We listened that people didn't want it to be too long. They didn't want it to be too complicated. They didn't, a lot of things. And so we have pulled together a little working group, and we came up with these agreements to define our expectations, kind of help us enhance how we communicate, address any conflict resolution, talk a bit about performance standards, and foster kind of a cohesion. Now, please bear in mind, this is not, we have so many documents. So this is not designed to be the be all end all of what workforce development is about. This is about the board. and how the board interacts with each other and how the board's job. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's more internal than an external facing document. And so yeah, so we'll take a look at it. We'll go back up. Can you go back up to the top? Sorry. So we tried to do the WTDB and we put like a little intro. So the intro is, you know, the WTDB focuses on addressing Oregon's workforce challenges effectively through measurable changes and outcomes by aligning board members with its mission, advancing Oregon through education, training, jobs, and careers by empowering people and employers. So that's just kind of our opening salvo. And these member agreements are designed to be internal and to help members, in their internal and external interactions and enhance the WTDB's capacity to drive meaningful change in workforce development with a clear focus on real metrics, outcomes, and collaborative, respectful, solutions-oriented culture. So this is really about our culture. So we start with W. We want to work collaboratively. Our willingness to collaborate, to commit to working together, leveraging diverse expertise and perspectives of each board member to address workforce challenges comprehensively. We also have wisdom sharing, want to promote the exchange of knowledge and best practices. Someone gave me another word for best practice recently. It's lessons learned. So we might change that to lessons learned, Todd. And the reason the person mentioned to me about best practices because it feels like you have to already have reached the best and you may not have. And we don't want people to feel intimidated. What are their lessons learned? So I thought that was nice. To enhance the board's collective intelligence and decision making. So we're sharing things to enhance each other. Engagement and participation, actively participate in board discussions, activities, showing commitment to the board's mission and responsibilities. So that gets at our obligation at being board members. T, we can scroll up, transparency and trust. Transparency in action and decision. We want to ensure that all board activities and decisions are conducted openly. We obviously have legal obligations for that, but also fostering trust among members and with the public. We want to engage in trust building. We want to commit to actions that build and maintain trust both within the board and external stakeholders, understanding that trust is foundational and effective to collaboration and public confidence. Respect and civility. We want to treat all members with respect, fostering an environment of civility and mutual appreciation. D for data-driven. Scroll up there. Data-driven decision-making. We want to use data utilization because this came up in our conversation. People are like, well, just make sure we talk about the bottom line. So we want to agree to base our decisions on reliable data, research, and evidence, ensuring that actions are targeted and effective in meeting the workforce needs of Oregonians. Dedication to outcomes, focus on setting and achieving measurable goals that reflect real positive changes in workforce development. And scroll up. And as you see, we got that all on almost one page. So we just got one other page here. Accountability, hold oneself and each other accountable for commitments and responsibilities, recognizing that accountability strengthens board effectiveness. And B, boldness in vision and action, encouraging taking calculated risk, innovative approaches to overcome workforce challenges, pushing beyond traditional boundaries to find effective solutions, continuous improvement. We know it's not a B, but we had to include it. Embrace a mindset of continuous improvement, seeking always to learn, adapt, enhance the board strategies and outcomes in workforce development, and beneficial innovations. Pursue innovations that have clear benefits for Oregon's workforce, including new technologies, partnerships, and strategies that can lead to substantial improvements in workforce development. So I think that's it, right? Is there anything below that? No, it's just the intro and that. So I think it's like is it like a page? How long is it? It's kind of big print, but it's like a page and a quarter. Is it 2 pages?
It's 2 pages, but it's about
Yeah.
a page and a quarter, maybe pushing a third, but yeah.
So the goal is to try to give us a working document that we can refer to, that we can refer back to, that we can agree to, that when people join the board, like Martha, they can have and be like, oh, this is what my some of my, I'm going to call them spiritual, but they're not the legal, so they are the spiritual obligations, right, of being on the board. And so that was what we were going for. So, we are for sure open to feedback because it was, just trying to come up with something that we thought was reflective. So if folks have feedback. Again, we didn't want to make it too complicated. This is not an external document. This is not a legal document. This is how we should respect and treat each other, how we should work with each other, what we should be aiming toward as board members. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
All right. Any questions?
Sherry, just a quick comment.
Go ahead.
I did send it out to folks for their review and comments, and wanted to let you know I didn't get any. So FYI.
Okay, yeah, I like changing best practices to, what did I say? I forgot already.
You said
learning?
lessons learned.
Lessons learned, yeah. See, I forgot what I'm talking about. Yeah, lessons learned. And I think that's good, right? Because when the person mentioned that to me, I thought, oh, that is a really good point, right? People feel like I don't have best practices. You don't have to. Let's share our lessons learned, because that in and of itself gets us to our best practices, you know. So
Great.
anyway, that's my only critique.
Yep, I grabbed that note. I'll make that change.
All
And I
right.
put a suggestion in the chat, Sherry, for using betterment instead of continuous improvement, since it begins with a B.
Okay. All right. I'm
Betterment.
fine with that. Betterment, the betterment of improvement. We were kind of, at a loss there. We could make some bees work, but couldn't make everything. So
We want to make the right bees work too.
that's correct. That is correct. We don't want to get a little too saucy here.
No, this was great. I like how you all captured the feedback and translated into, I like how the WTDB is built into this, because it's who we are and what we strive to be. And then also looking forward to this translating into action. This is not a comment on this, but rather like maybe for a later discussion, just I want to put this out there because this is a thought in my mind right now, is how will we hold ourselves to this? Like at the end of each year, do we have a discussion on like how will we talk about this, and keep this at the forefront in terms of saying, how well did we do this year? How, so I just want to put that out there for later discussion as a parking topic.
Accountability metrics, right? And I think Anne loves that kind of conversation. So I think it's definitely something that we've thought about using at the beginning of our sessions, just saying, hey, can we take a minute to reflect back on our agreements, or just maybe even reading the headlines. And then when things come up, it gives us the ability to refer back to the agreements. Hey, this is something that I think, we do want to be bold. So let's talk about this, right? And then, the idea of turning it into metrics is an interesting one. So I don't know, Anne.
Yeah, I haven't thought about it in terms of specifically like how you turn these into metrics. I think these are kind of behavioral, so it'd be more like we could survey ourselves at the end of the year and then do a recap, like how do we think we're performing against these, this set of expectations, and then have a conversation about it, and then maybe set some goals for how we want to strengthen it in the year to come, and then maybe that becomes the look back on how we did. Are we bettering ourselves? As we kind of progress and mature in this work. So I love the idea of doing like an end of the year look back. And I also think it's good each meeting to do it. We do it with the Oregon Clean Energy Coalition. Every meeting, my job is to read them out loud. And it has actually worked really well for us. We've had a couple of instances where things have come up where things that weren't in concert with sort of what we said were our principles. And so we've been able to kind of talk about those without a lot of heat. And like, oh yeah, that doesn't really fit with what we said. Because sometimes there's things that come up that just, that like to your point, Sherry, like, is this position we're taking, is it bold? And maybe it challenges us to think differently about how we make some decisions. So thank you. And thank you, Sherry, for leading this work. It was really, really nicely done. Okay, with that, I think we'll move on to our legislative short session update. Vince, are you going to give that?
I can try, and I'll rely on Julia or anybody else that's neck deep in legislative issues. Not a ton of stuff to talk about specific to workforce, but there are a few high profile things I can certainly call out. In my office, the governor has one bill, it's a priority bill around the housing production package that I'm sure some of you have been following. It's made it out of committee, and I think it's had a floor vote and moving on. But anyway, it's all hands on deck in the governor's office to just focus on that bill right now. That includes some investments to support middle income housing production. Still hoping to keep some programmatic money around infrastructure for housing connected to the bill, although the legislature has some other ideas of how they want to invest in infrastructure projects that we're going back and forth on. But yeah, that's the governor's priority bill, and we'll continue to work on it. I know, Steve, you called me and I left you a message this morning. What would be relevant to this board and future conversations is once the outcome of this bill and our housing team is able to pivot and focus more on the workforce and like how are we going to build all the housing that we hope to build. Those conversations are on hold until like the short session is over, but we hope to ramp them up soon, sometime mid to late March, and get really kind of plugged in on the workforce piece of that. Other issues that I'm working on, just focusing on some additional changes to paid leave Oregon that's keeping the employment department pretty busy. And there's some there's a bill that is moving now over in the House that would combine the benefits, a lot of the overlapping benefits that are in OFLA with paid leave Oregon, and so that there would be like concurrency for coverage of OFLA and paid leave benefits. That I think this is something that the private sector has been advocating for a while, and so trying to navigate and move forward on a thoughtful path on that front. Semiconductors, there are a couple different bills proposing some new ideas around semiconductor talent and workforce investments, as well as a bill focused on offering up childcare to support construction in the semiconductor space. We're tracking both of those bills. The governor's office doesn't have a position on either of them, but they do now have amendments. I think that the big debate, the big thing in the session at this point in time when we're midway through is there are 82 bills that have moved from the original policy committee into the Ways and Means Committee. And I will just say there is not enough money to fund 82 bills in the Ways and Means Committee. So there's a lot of behind the scenes haggling over which bills that are in the Ways and Means Committee will be funded and which bills will not move forward. And that's really taking up a lot of time and energy behind the scenes. Two quick things on the workforce bill and the child care bill relating to semiconductors is they have amendments that would give us some flexibility of how we use the already allocated Senate bill, the Oregon CHIPS Fund money that we were given in the 2023 session, that if certain projects went down in scope and funds became available from the original Oregon CHIPS Fund, that we might, and there is strategic, what's the right word? There's just a good strategic reason to reallocate or rethink where we could purpose those leftover funds to either a child care initiative tied in with semiconductors or even a workforce and talent one. We hope to have that flexibility, and we'll be watching both of those bills through the end of the short session. Julia, Jennifer, do you guys or anyone at the HEC want to chime in on, or I'm happy to answer other questions. I mean, there are like north of 240 bills, but thought I'd just hit the highlights.
You covered most of the big ones that we're following. I'll just add in, and Clay can chime in because I don't know the current status of this one, but there is a bill that would require us, the WTDB in particular, to study the forestry workforce. So we're tracking that pretty closely.
I think that, go ahead, Clay.
I was just going to say that's part of Senator Dembro's big education bill. And so, yes, we are tracking that one pretty closely. Thanks, Julia.
I will comment on one just high level issue that we're kind of navigating and dealing, it kind of ties back to the governor's housing bill, is there definitely has been a shift in the legislature that I've witnessed where instead of throwing money into programs that would then do evaluation and come up with a comprehensive plan, that we've now switched more to a appropriation for specific projects approach at the legislature. And it's causing a little bit of heartburn in the executive branch, but I mean, I wouldn't say it's a huge problem, but it's just definitely something that we've seen as a shift, and that certain committees or legislators are making choices to directly fund specific projects as opposed to throwing money into a program like a Future Ready is a good example, and let a process develop a strategy.
Do you think that's because, I mean, or that's in keeping with her comments at the summit about, we're not going to study things anymore, no more pilots, let's get on with it, sort of the pressure maybe from people to see more action, I guess, rather than studying things? Is that because she kind of said that when she got up on the stage and talked about, the work in Portland, and said, we're not going to have a blue ribbon committee, we're going to start doing stuff?
Well, so there is like a fine balance there. I mean, I think that there's still going to
No,
be
I'm not
plenty.
arguing one way or the other.
Yeah,
I'll be
yeah,
I'm being very careful here.
No, no,
because
no,
I think
no.
it depends
It's a
on the
good question.
situation.
I still anticipate despite the efforts to keep as many studies down as low as possible. That's like the path of least resistance often for killing a decent idea is, well, we'll go study it. But I think the balance, I think what the trend has happened is since COVID and a tremendous amount of ARPA funds and federal funds that came and put more money in the hands of legislators to make decisions on specific projects, maybe in their district. I don't want to call them. I can't remember what the federal term is, but I mean, I think it became because earmarks. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think we're going through a little bit of an earmark phase right now, and the only challenge with that is that sometimes earmarks go to projects and then don't fully finance or complete a project, and then what do you do after that? Or so I'm probably giving you all a little too much insight than I should, but I think that is something that we're witnessing that's interesting to watch.
Well, I'll say, Vince, too, for a company that works in a lot of different states, we're seeing that nationwide too. So it seems to be either go to a pilot project, no longer studying, but just test it, put it on the ground and see how it walks, basically. And so it seems to be a national trend.
All right. Anything else? Oh, sorry, Heather.
I was just wondering, still can't find my mute button apparently. Does this body ever support bills through the legislative process? And if we do, what is our process to do that? Because it feels like we should, if we're an advisory body, it seems like we should weigh in sometimes, but.
I can answer from my time on the board, Heather. We have in the past, but more as an individual, not so much as a board. So
Yeah.
if we did in at least the Kit Topper years, you were allowed to say that you were on the Talent Workforce Development Board. As chair, I wasn't allowed to really say, we're supporting, because then I'd be speaking on behalf of the governor, and that wasn't really allowed unless the governor asked me to do it. But for the most part, it was individual board members could say, we're studying certain issues, and I'm personally in support of that. So we did allow that from that perspective, but typically never as a joint body unless we advise something, because our charter basically says we advise the governor and the legislative branch now. So if we are going to do something like that, I guess we could do it in a letter. But before we made that change, it was really just we would make a recommendation to the governor, and that would be as far as it went.
Julia?
Yeah, I think also if it is a agency, a HEC legislative concept or policy option package that was supported by the governor, included in the governor's budget and supported as an LC, then the board is free to express support for that.
I just think it'll be really great when the pivot to construction workforce happens. It'd be wonderful if this body could weigh in. It sounds like Steve also has a passion for that. So, and there's just some House bills and some Senate bills that would really be supportive to workforce that aren't about funding. So for example, House Bill 4097, removing barriers to expungement for returning citizens. So folks that are returning from incarceration, that would be very helpful to have a more robust workforce. So if we get to a place where we can start doing that, maybe that's something we can talk about in our policy work group. I don't know where that fits, but.
I would say, I mean, I'm certainly open to getting feedback and getting, like Ken mentioned, getting advice. And, that like the bill you just referenced was not one that I was tracking. We try, I think our message to the agencies on the executive branch side of things is, if it is a governor's office endorsed bill, or if it's an agency concept that has been gone through the process and gets a thumbs up, by all means, go and advocate. If it's something originated out of the legislature, we tend to advise people just to remain neutral. And then if you want to bring it forward and have everyone vet it and have a discussion, that's fine. And maybe we all come out to a common agreement and say, yeah, this is a good idea. Happy to do that, but I think it would be something WTDB would do in consult with the HEC and the governor's office.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is what is interesting when you look at models, right, for other boards around the country, because you see, so when you look in California, like I know they have a legislative part of their workforce board, like that is part of what they do. Related to workforce. So I think as we think about what our role is, and I think to Heather's point, and we can do this in concert with the governor, but there does seem that there might be legislative items around workforce that we should discuss and we should have an opinion on, if at the very least. And so I think that's a valuable question to flesh out a little bit more. And like I said, looking at what other WTDBs around the country do. So
should we take that as an action item for follow-up?
I'd appreciate it.
All right, thank you. And thank you, Vince and Julia, for the update, and Jennifer. All right, Clay, you are up now to talk to us about the state plan.
The state plan is very quick but important. We have a special meeting scheduled for this month, last day, February 29th, on Thursday, the 29th at noon, to vote on the state plan so that we can submit it to the Department of Labor on March the 4th. So please, if you can be in attendance, please be in attendance for that meeting. We need to have a quorum to have that vote and move that plan forward. I will say very quickly, the plan is out for public comment so far, and we really have not received any yet. That's not necessarily unusual. It takes a little bit of time for people to formulate their thoughts, and it obviously is a comprehensive plan. But sometime in the next few days, we'll have a sense of whether we're going to get much public comment or not. Ken?
Yeah, I just had this prompted me when you're encouraging people to be at the board meeting. And I know we've had issues where we haven't met quorum before, and I serve on a couple other boards, more private boards, but the being able to give your proxy vote to another board member. I don't think we have anything in our bylaws, but is that something we would maybe want to consider down the road to allow for a proxy to be passed on to another board member with specifics on how you would want to be voted? That way you wouldn't have to be present to pass some of that, and it would help with the quorum.
Todd, do you want to jump in on that
Yeah,
one?
that's a good question, Ken. Currently in the bylaws, that's not allowed. But staff can do some research and determine what the possibilities are, and then bring that back at our next meeting for y'all to consider. Does that sound good to you, Ken?
Yeah, that sounds good. I'm sorry, we've got a fire alarm going off, so I might have to
Sorry.
the building.
Do you need to go?
Yeah, they're telling me that doesn't appear to be. Every once in a while, someone does something in the utility room.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, but if you do see me running quickly, I'm right by a door. So
there's flame.
Be safe, Ken.
Yeah.
So that's all for the state plan, unless there are any other questions.
Just a reminder that Clay sent out that really nice guide on how to work your way through it, since it was like 400 pages or something. Like you see, so there's a way to like focus your attention. So thank you for doing that, Clay. And maybe as a follow-on to the meeting, you can send it out so it's at the top of people's boxes again.
Sure.
Thank you.
And then I'll go ahead. All right. And so the next item is regarding the WTDB policy work group. This is a new work group, and I'm just calling your attention to it because you'll hear, particularly at executive committee meetings, future work related to policy development. The Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act requires the state board to have certain policies related to the operation of the system. In addition, there are instances where there are state priorities that either come from the governor's office or from HEC or from others that warrant the development of a policy. We have, I believe, around 15 or 16 policies in existence already that have been passed previously. And so this new work group is going to take on the responsibility of ensuring that those policies are up to date, ensuring that they are compliant with the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act and these state laws that might apply, and other kinds of things that we should be aligned with. And then bring those policy recommendations to the executive committee for approval. The only other thing that I wanted to mention here was that we were very intentional in the creation of this work group to try to bring in a variety of different perspectives so that we could have as inclusive and comprehensive a review process as possible. We have local boards represented, we have state agencies represented, we have different levels within organizations represented, we have rural and urban represented. So there was a very intentional effort to try to make sure the work group was representative, of the system that it is seeking to create policies around. So unless there are any questions, this is just an introduction. Since you'll see it down the road, I just wanted you to know that it was out there and working, and at a future meeting, we'll probably bring forward recommendations from the work group. Heather.
I just have to say again that I feel like Clay is doing an exceptional job with the work groups. I feel like he is very organized. The agendas are clear. We have our materials a week plus in advance, and I just really, really appreciate it. You're kind of kicking ass, so.
That's awesome.
Well, and I didn't pay Heather for that.
Yeah, I will accept coffee next time I see you, but.
So unless there are any other questions, that's all for the work group. Anne.
Thank you, Clay. And thank you, Heather. It's always, it's great that you extended appreciation like that. You know, it's something that I've been trying to do more frequently, and I'm realizing it's just, you know, it's easier to tell people what's not going well versus remembering to reinforce the things that are going well. So thank you for modeling that. All right, next up, we are going to have an update on Future Ready Oregon, and I think we have Sarah and Carrie with us.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having us today. We have a slide presentation that we want to share with you.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We really appreciate it. I'm Carrie Weichel-Delaplane, and my colleague Sarah Foster is here as well, and we're super grateful for the opportunity to have some time with you today. We want to share the work we've been doing related to industry consortia as part of Future Ready Oregon. We're also eager to engage in conversation with you today around ways we could potentially leverage our value proposition to support the important work of the WTDB. Next slide, please. So this is an illustration of the legislative mandate related to industry consortia. I wanted to highlight that the legislation names industry consortia as advisory to the Workforce and Talent Development Board. And we're excited today to explore how we could potentially support your work. Next slide. And I'll hand it over to Sarah. Oh, Sarah, you're muted.
Thanks. I'm sharing screen and can't see my bubble, but I was just going to share that I encourage folks, while I can't see you, but if you have questions along the way, just to raise your hand or just unmute and talk and ask questions. But we really just wanted to take the opportunity. I think we're at this moment in time where the industry consortia have almost advanced their short-term objectives, but the kind of premise and the value of the consortia are really to build partnerships beyond the traditional post-secondary education and training system, and those are reflected in our membership. Engaging workforce service providers, community-based and culturally specific organizations, local workforce boards, economic development organizations, labor, and other state agency partners. And also each consortium has an executive leadership team. I know a couple of you serve on that and also serve on this board, so just appreciate your ongoing engagement in this work. And the executive leadership teams are really responsible for setting the strategic direction of our work. And you can see the membership here on this slide. So as I mentioned, I feel like we're in this moment of time. We just are in the process of wrapping up, and the timeline and objectives are on the right-hand side, wrapped up our short-term objectives, which was advising on future rounds of Workforce Ready grant funding. And we're going to share a little bit of an update there at the end of this presentation, but wanted to take this moment to really lean in as we plan for the medium and long term, that we're really in this ambiguous space as we surface feedback from partners about the value of the consortia and the role that they can play, especially nested at the HEC. And we recognize that the industry consortia are really doing things differently. And that means we're expanding the scope of the conversation around the workforce and talent development system by including diverse perspectives and voices that haven't necessarily been engaged in some of these conversations in the past. And I think I just want to name that this work is inherently an uncomfortable space to be in. And we're building relationships with among consortium members who have never really worked together before. So just want to name that takes time. And I'll share, we started as a consortium with the hardest thing, which is funding. But pleased that we're getting to a space we're able to advance those recommendations. But really, these new relationships are being formed, and that has helped us. I know for me, as I've talked to consortium members and engaged partners outside of even the membership, is really helping us, I think, articulate our value proposition, which is what we want to spend the most of our time today. So I'm going to share, we're going to spend the time talking about these bubbles on the outside of this graphic, but we really...
Sarah,
yeah,
sorry to interrupt, but
Ken,
Ken had his hand up. Ken,
Love
did
it.
you want to say something?
I did have a question about the funding, but I also should preface that with I was just at an event this morning with PCC in the Hillsborough School District on a mobile welding unit that was showcased, and they had on the side of the truck, besides the sponsor for that program was Union Pacific Railroad, but it also said it was Future Ready Oregon dollars that helped to kickstart some of that. So that kind of led me to how much dollars have already been given out from that program, and how much are still in the program to be given out?
That might be that's a great question, Ken. And I do want to mention that we're going to talk about how the industry consortia are informing future rounds, but I think my colleague Jennifer Purcell is here and might be able to answer the specific question related to, I don't know if that specific pot of money was Workforce Ready grant funding or not, because there are many grant opportunities within Future Ready Oregon, including P10K and credit for prior learning, et cetera. So maybe Jennifer, if you're listening and might have a better articulation of an answer than I do.
Thanks, Sarah. Hi, Ken. I think the question was how much funding is left. The short answer is there is $40 million available in the balance of the Workforce Ready grant funding. And that is being allocated across each of the 3 industries that funding was required to support. So we will be advancing a request for applications for a total of $18 million for healthcare projects and programs, $12 million for manufacturing projects and programs, and $10 million for technology projects and programs over the next several months. And all of that money that was included, all of the ARPA funding included in Future Ready Oregon must be obligated by the end of this year and spent by the end of 2026.
Okay, great, thank you.
You bet.
Were there other questions? And I can't, unfortunately, I have 2 screens going, so I can only see whoever last spoke.
I'll let you know if someone raises their hand.
Wonderful. Thank you. So I don't want to spend a ton of time on this slide, but just kind of lean in to, as we've been engaging with feedback from partners, as we've moved through our short-term objective, we've also been thinking about really the value we're going to bring to the space in the medium and long term. And we really see kind of 5 key components of our value proposition that are outlined in the circles on the outside. And I want to in this slide just draw you to call your attention to the middle bubble. And I want to emphasize that this doesn't center the HEC at all, but wanted to emphasize the role of the convener and the role of a convener when engaging with or setting up or running industry consortia. And we are really seeing the value of HEC as a convener to really leverage the HEC's role in of convening education and training providers, serving as a connector and relationship builder between various and expanded partners I mentioned on the previous slide, including labor, community, education, and industry. Spending the time to build and maintain those relationships and kind of expand in the ways we think about the workforce and talent development system, and then informing HEC strategies to meet the sector-specific workforce needs. Carrie, you're next.
Thank you, Sarah. I want to talk a little bit more about our value proposition as it relates to the sector-specific expertise. As Sarah was saying, like, this is about leveraging the convener role of the HEC and gaining sector specific expertise so that we can work with our internal partners within the agency. In fact, I've got an example to share with you. We've been working with CCWD, Community College Workforce Development Group, and now our consortia group is actually a standing piece of all the CTE dean meetings within the state at the community colleges. So we're really working hard to add value and work with different groups on the ground related to education and training to be that bridge and to support efforts and actually maybe even add capacity, really. So it's a really exciting proposition, and we've been excited to work with our internal partners to look at how we can best support the agency as a whole. So next slide, please. All right, so regional partnerships is, I want to read the first bullet out loud because it's that important to us. We manifest the belief that state level work is only as good as its regional and local partnerships, and we hold strong to that belief. We believe that working with already existing efforts and groups and our workforce boards and regional partners across the state is the way to best engage and to, okay, we'll see you in a second. And we're really excited about where we've gotten in a short amount of time. I want to shout out to members of the workforce boards who are part of this group and thank you. We're working together where we've developed what we're calling a regional engagement model with the consortia, and we're actually doing a pilot of it with manufacturing, where I'm working with the business services leads of all the workforce boards throughout the state and getting to work with them as a formal feedback loop for our group and go back and forth with information. And for instance, we're going to be running some focus groups in the next couple of months. And so that provides an awesome opportunity for regional engagement with those partners to look at how we can have representatives throughout the state in different aspects of manufacturing to come forward and really bring that strong regional perspective. So we're really committed to finding that balance of statewide, but lifting up all the regional and local work. So with that said, I'm going to pass it back to Sarah.
Yeah, thanks, Carrie. So another component of our value proposition is integrating supply and demand data, workforce supply and demand data. So we've been, leveraging data from the HEC and industry to inform our funding recommendations. And this process has helped us elevate, especially I know for me in the healthcare space, some gaps and possible areas the consortium could lean into in the medium and long term. So we've been, leaning into Oregon Longitudinal Data Collaborative's nursing study, and that was tremendously helpful in helping us coalesce around some nursing recommendations. But that process helped us really uncover that there are multiple ways to measure demand, and that's kind of out there on who sets demand and measures demand. But we're just exploring our role in this ongoing question about who determines the demand for various sectors, how we're using data to drive strategy, and gaps that could potentially be filled with deep industry and employer engagement and helping us set up better data systems. And that's on the demand side. Now on the supply side, we're able to lean in a lot in the HEC space here with education and training data, but we've also revealed that we need better program level data on as we're moving through these funding conversations and we're trying to make targeted investments in whether it's skills-based programs, but just having a sense of the landscape of what's out there is going to be helpful as we think about investing in the future. So we're really leaning into potentially a role in adding value to thinking strategically about how to use and what systems we need in place for workforce supply and demand data. And then our last value proposition before we go into the update is aspirational. I know you all talked about policy earlier in this meeting, and so we're going to talk about policy again, but I think that in our charters and as we've thought about our charge as it relates to the WTDB and the HEC is really informing sector-specific policy and funding strategy for the workforce system. And I think that this means we're also thinking about leveraging cross-system and cross-sector investments. I think it was Ken that was sharing that while Future Ready Oregon was one component of a project, there were other funders that helped bring that project to life. And so really thinking strategically about our role in that. Leaning into, I think Julia was mentioning earlier, just really our sphere of influence and expertise in the education and training and workforce policy space. And then I know for healthcare specifically, there's a whole health policy space that we can't ignore and we need to be aligned and linked to. And so while we won't lead in that space, just continuing to build relationships across state agencies and partners to really lean in and be a thought partner where we might not lead. And then I just want to underscore our belief that that our work is only as good as regional work, and we really see a space in the policy and funding to identify where there might be state barriers. And where our role as a statewide consortia could really add value to regional and local work. So with that, I'm just going to recognize that our work is in systems change, and that can feel really squishy, nebulous, or ethereal. But I think it's really important as we think about advancing more strategic, sector-specific workforce and talent development system that includes policy and funding. But we're going to get specific now around the funding, and just wanted to give you some updates on where we're at in the process for advising on Workforce Ready grant funding. Jennifer mentioned that we have about $40 million left for grant making, and each of the consortia have been going through a process. And I like to say, as I've convened bigger groups before, that these work groups are an opportunity to start building that collaborative muscle. So we started with the hard thing, but I'm proud of our groups that really came together and leaned into the messy space of, we don't have everything perfect, but what can we do to be a little more strategic in how we're thinking about sector-specific workforce funding? So I'll give the healthcare and technology update and then give it to Carrie for manufacturing before we move to questions. But in healthcare, we submitted our recommendations at our January 25th meeting. We were able to advance recommendations that we will run 2 RFAs specific to healthcare. And one will be around the nursing career pathway, and one will be around regionally identified workforce needs. Our statewide data show that we have a nursing shortage across the state, but as we were engaging our regions, they were like, well, sometimes 3 surgical techs are going to solve our workforce problem. So we didn't want to solely focus on nursing and allow for those regional priorities to show up. Technology, our work group wrapped up yesterday. I had the pleasure, I know, Venkat, if you're still here, I can't see you, but appreciated your participation in that group. This group is really coalescing around broad technology skills that could be applied across sectors. So not necessarily technology sector specific, but thinking about IT, engineering, software development, all of those tech skills that can apply to multiple sectors. And then the learner or the worker has those transferable skills to move in the employment market. And Carrie, do you want to give a quick update on manufacturing?
Yeah, just quick update. Our first work group meeting is actually tomorrow, and we'll be looking at the themes that have emerged from our larger consortium meeting that we just had on January 31st. And using that and plenty of labor market data to inform decisions moving forward. So we're going to have our meeting on the 20th of March, where we'll provide recommendations to the larger group and then move forward on that request for applications.
Yeah, so I'm going to leave us with these questions, but since we're running out of time, maybe we just focus on the first one, which is how y'all envision the consortium model adding the most value to the WTDB, and then just if you have any questions for us. And I'm going to stop sharing so that I can see all your faces.
Hey,
Steve, you had, oh,
just
go
real
ahead.
quick,
Sorry, Todd.
sorry, Carrie. Real quick on the time, we've got plenty of time, so
Okay.
please don't let that sort of cause any troubles around a robust discussion.
Great. Thank you, Steve. I see your hand up, and Steve's a member of the manufacturing group. Thank you, Steve.
Yes. As you are studying all the data and looking at programs that are out there and how they're working, I think a good study would be the Hillsborough High School's Bully's certified manufacturing youth apprenticeship program, which ticks all the boxes for your value proposition and what we're trying to accomplish with the manufacturing. But that program is in danger of being terminated. And that is a program for a school that is over 60% minority population. And we're looking at that on the construction side as a potential model to start getting more youth into the pipeline early. So I think it would be good for the consortium to take a look at that and kind of reverse engineer and find out, where the hurdles are on that program that was BOLI certified, but now it's in danger. So I think it would be really good for them to take a look at that and understand what's going on there, because they check all the boxes that the value proposition of the consortium for manufacturing is looking at.
Great. Thank you very much for sharing that. I will definitely raise that for our consortium to take a look at. And
One
actually,
quick comment.
Sorry.
Go
ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Venkat. I have one quick comment. I think, I've raised this before, is that across healthcare technology and manufacturing, technology has such a broad role to play across all three sectors that I think it makes sense for the leadership team across all three consortium to get together and share recommendations and best practices and then report that to the WTDB rather than each one individually come in. I think that would be a good thing to do.
I love that idea, Venkat.
I was just going to echo Steve's comment about the Hillsborough apprenticeship program, youth apprenticeship program, that I was having an earlier discussion last week with the German American school in Beaverton, and they're partnering with Daimler to establish a youth apprenticeship program for them too. And I know the Hillsborough, because I was intimately involved in that development of that program, the big stumbling block currently was that there was no adult apprenticeship program to feed the youth apprenticeship program into. And I was talking to Travis this morning about Travis from our board and the superintendent of the Hillsborough School District about how I think the youth apprenticeship can be the founding block for an adult apprenticeship program. So instead of saying, this is the reason why we're going to put a roadblock in is because there's nothing to feed into, we should start at the youth apprenticeship almost and feed that into the adult portion of it. And so I think it's a different way of thinking for BOLI, but honestly, I think it's a way a lot of other states that are implementing youth apprenticeship programs, especially in non-traditional apprenticeship program areas, that there is no adult apprenticeship program. So you have to start somewhere, and the school system is a great way to start and create that program, and then have them produce higher level apprenticeships if that's the case, or even we talk about stackable credentials, but stackable apprenticeship programs where maybe you take somebody from IT and promote it into an engineering degree. Those type of programs, I think it's outside the box thinking, but it's what we need to do if we're going to fill some of these gaps.
And can I add to me, one of the biggest value propositions for what they're doing is they're bringing industry and education together and working with youth so that those youth are now on the radar of people in the industry. Because if I have a business and I know that there's this youth apprenticeship program. I want to connect with those kids, because those kids are demonstrating to me that they have a motor, and we're looking for kids that got a motor that we can connect with early, so that they can start building also these long-term or authentic relationships that we really need to start developing. So I just think that it is a critical piece to be able to really expand the pipeline, to get more youth and particularly minorities into the different industries.
Thank you so much. Todd, I see your hand up.
Oh, thanks, Gary. Hey, I just wanted to welcome a face I see here that's relatively new, but seems to have a passionate interest in our work, and that's to Howard Burns with Oregon State University. I just wanted to mention that Ken and Steve and I met yesterday with Howard and had a great conversation. I think it ties back to what you just said, Steve, in terms of the connection between education and private sector. I don't mean to put you on the spot, Howard, but I see you sitting there and you've got great things to say so far in the short time I've known you. And I just wanted to give you space if you wanted to chime in on any of what you've heard.
Well, thanks very much, Todd. I quite candidly am on board and aligned to everything that was said. And I think having, education connected with the consortia, I think will result in a better outcome. And I like the approach of leveraging the consortia to make the decisions, the grant decisions, and so forth.
And Anne, I thought I saw your hand up before, so wanted.
Yeah, I was going to ask you all your question. Turn your question back on you. Like, how can we be of service to you?
That's such a good question. I think as we're leaning into advancing this value proposition, being thought partners and thinking strategic. I know that the WTDB has this kind of broad vision and you're setting strategic direction. And I think that's needed and great and awesome. And so as you're thinking about your strategic plan and your role in advancing that strategic plan, I think what we're trying to do is not deviate. We really want to add value to the WTDB and add value to the HEC, especially as we're leaning into these three sectors that are called out in Future Ready Oregon. I know consortia are much broader than the three we're convening at the HEC, and you know that well with your role at PGE. But we're really seeing the value in informing HEC and the WTDB. That's why I think we have, compared to maybe some of the other consortia. So I think just continuing to have these moments of conversation and dialogue and relationship building, I know are tremendously valuable to Carrie, Jennifer, and I as we're moving through this process. Ken, Steve, others that have shared those examples, like we really do, I'll say it again, manifest the belief that our strategy builds from the ground up and builds from those examples and learning from those examples. And so I think it's just each moment in time, I learn something new and learn different connection points of how maybe we think differently as a consortia. Engage different perspectives in our process. So, Anne, that was not an answer to your question, but because I don't have one, all I do want to say is we really want to lean into this partnership and add value to the work that you're doing.
That's great.
I would just second that and say, and just add that it's this communication piece that I think is so important, and then hopefully you can think of us as a resource and think about ways that you can leverage the work that we're doing. But back to Sarah's point, we want to make sure that we're aligned with the work that you're doing so that we can be that resource.
Well, and I should mention, when I talked about that mobile welding unit that PCC has put out, and it's going through actually all the school districts within PCC's district. So we're talking 3 counties in general. I looked at that and I thought, we have one, we could use a fleet. And I guess that's the plan. And I'm willing to sponsor, maybe not the whole fleet, but maybe a few other units. But I want to know that maybe there's some other dollars from the state's going to put into it. As a, as a private company, I'm trying to do what's best for my community, for my my state. But I want to know there's skin in the game for everybody to some degree, because I think that's where success comes from. So this is where I look at it and go, okay, this is a program I could get behind, but I want to make sure other people are supporting it as well.
And I don't know if Venkat and Dr. Bennings, I know you're both engaged as ELT members, so just wanted to give you space and thank you for serving on the executive leadership teams as we move through, especially I feel like at this pivotal moment as we're moving to our medium-term objectives. So just wanted to give you space.
Thank you. No, I think you've hit the highlights for the consortium, so I have nothing to add.
Nothing from my side also, Sarah. I missed the second funding working group meeting. I know on the technology side, we were narrowing down to 3 RFAs with a recommendation to distill it into 2. But I look forward to the notes from the second funding working group to catch up before the meeting on the 29th.
Sounds good.
Any other questions or comments? Well, I think you should plan on being a regular, so we'll have that, we'll have you back so we all stay aligned. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Todd, you're up next for an update on the KIC, the Continuous Improvement Committee.
Thanks so much, Anne, and thanks so
Can
much.
I just, I'm sorry, Todd, I just want to thank Anne for saying the acronym and then the description.
I'm trying.
Oh, and I'll add that to my update right now since you made me think of it, Sherry. A while back, Sherry had asked again, I think, me to pull together a list of often used acronyms by the board or in connection with the board. So I did do some homework, and I got a list and added to that list and provided it, but sort of in the spirit of there being way too much, it was way too much. And so Sherry asked me to winnow that down, which I'm going to try and get done today, if not today, tomorrow. But rest assured, there will be a bit of an acronym cheat sheet coming your way soon. And thank you to Sherry and Ann for sort of pushing that along and making that come to fruition. I think our plan is to just include it in every packet. So if you ever have a question about what the heck we just said, acronym-wise, you can just go to that. And if there are additional acronyms, I'll just say this. If there are additional acronyms that you wish would be like addressed and added to the list once you see it, please just let me know and we'll make sure that we get that taken care of. So I don't have a ton of time I'm expecting to spend on these 2 to 3 next updates. In terms of the Continuous Improvement Committee, or the KIC, as it's affectionately known, things continue to move along. Andrew McGough of Work Systems and myself co-staff that committee, and we are in the final stages of going back and forth to finalize the draft RFP, which we are going to send out and circulate with members for feedback, and then be discussing one final time a week from today at our regularly scheduled Continuous Improvement Committee meeting. It takes what we had previous to a meeting that, and thank you, Ann, for hosting, that was held at Portland General Electric not too long ago in January, a work session where we had a number of partners and business folks in the room to better understand their needs and sort of their vision for where they wanted KIC to go in 2024, and pulls a lot of that information into the RFP to make it even fresher and more relevant. So more to come on that soon. We also talked about potentially adopting the agreements that you just heard from Sherry on, and thank you again, Sherry, for your leadership, and also a shout out to Chelsea Watson for helping develop the those agreements. Appreciated your time and efforts there. That'll also be circulated with the KIC to see if they want to just go ahead and adopt those agreements for the way they conduct themselves in the course of doing business. The other thing that came up was to plan out the entire year in a more intentional and focused way. And also make sure that we do our best to visit different members and partners, local workforce boards, community-based organizations around the state, if at all possible. So not just, as is typically the case, more happening in metro, but try our best to schedule more trips to rural partners so that we get a feel for what's happening in rural Oregon. So I'll stop there with the KIC and move on to the Talent Assessment and Talent Summit. I think things are progressing nicely under SRI. That stands for Stanford Research Institute. Sorry, I almost messed that up, Sherry. And they're doing a great job as the contractor for leading the efforts, which will ultimately culminate in the talent assessment. One just quick factoid on a business survey that went out from SRI, they anticipated, based on typical response rates to a survey, that they would be good if they got 100 responses. So that was the goal. It looks like now, with the survey closing this Friday, that they'll have close to, if not over, twice that. So they're very excited about the response rate. So for any of you who have participated in that survey, hats off to you. Thank you so much for yet again another survey to get at the opportunities, issues, strengths, weaknesses around this workforce system we're all trying to improve to serve Oregonians. That talent assessment will be launched and presented at the May 14th and 15th Talent Summit. So this is a bit of a shameless plug. If you don't have the Talent Summit on your calendars, please mark those days, the 14th and 15th of May. This year, unlike previous years, it will be held in Salem at the Salem Convention Center. We anticipate a pretty good crowd, with it going from 1 day to the 2 days and integrating the good work of Future Ready Oregon. So we are in the midst of communicating with potential speakers and panelists, not only in the state, that can help with promising practices and lessons learned in this workforce education and training space in which we find ourselves, but also tapping into and bringing in speakers and folks from across the country that can also share their take on some of the main tracks and themes we have throughout the Talent Summit. Overall, the theme is going to be not business as usual. We hope to focus a significant amount on business and employers' engagement in the talent and workforce development space. That said, there will also be tracks for youth, Future Ready Oregon, and you'll see some of the things that you've heard us talk about pop up in either tracks or in sessions that include essential employability skills, which we as a board have been working on for quite some time. And then some of the job quality efforts that we're doing at the state and local level in concert with, once again, good work that's happening at Portland General Electric. So if you can at all make it, we would love to see you on those days. I think as we draw nearer, you'll see more and more communications coming from us here at the WTDB and the HEC around programming and what to expect at the Talent Summit. So I'll toss it back over to you, Anne.
Thank you, Todd. Any questions for Todd or comments? And anything else for the good of the order? And Sydney, I hate to put you on the spot. I was gonna IM you and I didn't. Action items for recap.
Yep, I have talk more about advocacy of legislative matters under the Vince Porter update. And then Clay will resend the state plan email to members for their review.
Great. Thank you.
And then one
Anything-
more, have Sarah and Carrie back regularly for future meetings.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else from the team here? All right, thank you so much for your attendance and participation. I hope you all have a good rest of the week. And thank you, Sydney, for convening us, and Todd for the agenda, and Sherry for your leadership. And Clay too.
Thank you. Yeah,
Take
yeah.
care. Bye-bye.
Always
Thank you.
been Clay. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.